Apple Card is a perfect card for your holiday shopping. You can apply on your iPhone in minutes and start using it right away. You'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Start holiday shopping for your friends and family today with Apple Card. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. Apple Card is a perfect card for your holiday shopping. You can apply on your iPhone in minutes and start using it right away. You'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Start holiday shopping for your friends and family today with Apple Card. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. You're listening to Well Now, Slate's podcast on health and wellness. I'm Kavita Patel.
And I'm Maya Feller. For those of you who missed our news last week, this will be the final episode of Well Now. While we're sad to be ending our time with you, we were happy to have had the opportunity to bring vital conversations to you about the wellness industry over this last year. Some of the conversations that have stuck with me are the conversation with Vanessa Kroll-Bennett about puberty.
When you mess up, because you will mess up, we all mess up, the most powerful thing we can do is take a do-over and to circle back and really own, hey, I said this thing to you yesterday, and I am so embarrassed that came out of my mouth. Can I get another chance to answer your question? Can I get another opportunity to have this conversation with you?
I have to tell you, Kavita, as the mom of 2 kids, having modern puberty explained to me in such tangible terms and helping me to think about the role of social media and kind of how fast life is. Because honestly, sometimes as a parent, I just don't get it. And I'm like, why are they all on their phones all the time? Why does it all matter so much? And so I found that conversation with Vanessa to just be really eye-opening and helpful. And in fact, I plan to get her book for all of my friends as holiday gifts. Another conversation that I loved was with Dr. Sharon Malone, Grown Woman Talk.
No one is going to know you better than you. So these are all the things and tips that I want you to have, because I want women to understand that I'm not belly aching about it. It's what it is. You know, it's where we are. But if you knew that, I think that you would understand the power you have, and you would also understand the things that you are responsible for.
I see so many people coming to my practice and saying, I feel like I don't know how to create a roadmap to bring into providers that I'm working with. And I just thought this idea of collecting information about yourself and your family history so that you're actually the keeper of your own knowledge was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, those were some of the ones that I absolutely enjoyed talking to. And I have to say, each and every person that came on allowed me a different viewpoint. And I enjoyed reading all the books and researching folks and getting to know their work as a way to kind of expand how I think about wellness for the people that I take care of, but also for myself. Kavita, what are some of the conversations that really stood out to you?
Yeah, there's so many. I actually think that because it sparked, I think, not only some of the discussion for our most recent show, but I do think Dave Asprey was a very both provocative and I think for me, very thought-provoking on an individual basis.
Biohacking is about creating the life you want and the body you want, the mind you want, and the spirit you want, instead of just being healthy.
He kind of opened my mind to things that, quite frankly, a year ago, I might have dismissed out of pocket and said, no, not so much, not something that we need to prioritize. I'm always a big fan of bringing on dermatologists. So I can't help but think of your dermatologist, Dr. Mudgill.
There's a lot of charlatanism in dermatology. There is literally a ton of it. And it drives me nuts. To use a word my kids use, I'm cringing inside. I just want to grab through my phone. I'm like, stop.
It's all sus.
It's sus.
Yeah,
it is sus.
It is.
And there's so much of that in dermatology.
Yeah.
It just drives me absolutely crazy.
Every time I go to put on like some sort of cream on at night or in the morning, and I hear his little voice in my ears, it's like, you really don't need any of that. No, you probably don't need that one either. Don't spend that much money on that. Probably not going to help you. And so that sticks out with me. And then most recently, I found it's a different take for us, I think, on the topic of wellness. I think that the conversation about like being a badass with Allison Fergale and how we talked about that in the context of like our own wellness and what that means to be kind of a badass woman is very appropriate.
Status is a resource. If you want to help people, they need to be able to be influenced by you. And whether that is you're influencing an end user or a customer, a patient, a client, whatever it is, you can't help anybody if you can't be influential. And so you have to think about building your own status as a resource to be able to influence people. And that is how you're going to be able to care and take care of them.
And actually, again, like when these worlds of health and wellness kind of really hit the real world, so to speak, that's exactly the conversation. You and I spend the bulk of our waking time at work. We would love to say it's with our family, with our loved ones, but it's basically at work. So making that better is all about health and wellness. So while we may be ending this show, there's still a lot to discuss about the future of wellness.
So after the break, we're bringing back veteran physician and longevity expert, Dr. Darshan Shah, to talk about what's next for the industry and what it might mean for you. Stay with us.
Apple Card is a perfect card for your holiday shopping. You can apply on your iPhone in minutes and start using it right away. You'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Start holiday shopping for your friends and family today with Apple Card. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. Apple Card is a perfect card for your holiday shopping. You can apply on your iPhone in minutes and start using it right away. You'll earn up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase, including products at Apple like a new iPhone 16 or Apple Watch Ultra. Start holiday shopping for your friends and family today with Apple Card. Subject to credit approval, Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Well Now, Slate's podcast on health and wellness. I'm Maya Feller.
And I'm Kavita Patel. As we close out the year, Maya and I are reflecting on the state of the wellness industry now and where we think it needs to go in the future. And who better to discuss that future with us than Dr. Darshan Shah? Listeners may remember him from last week's episode, where we talked about longevity science and how to play a more active role in your healthcare. And we thought he was the perfect person to turn to when discussing what needs to change in these industries going forward so they can provide the best care for all of us. So Dr. Shah, thanks so much for joining us again on Well Now.
Such a pleasure to be here again. Thank you for having me.
All right, last time you were on the show, we asked you to define wellness for yourself. Today, we'd like to ask you how you would describe the state of the health and wellness industry right now. Tell us what, in your mind, are some of the most important innovations, as well as some of the biggest challenges in health and wellness.
I think the state of the health and wellness industry, to answer your first question, is that we are at a really interesting moment in time, a time that I think that is going to turn the health and wellness industry around in a good and positive direction. I think the challenge that we have right now is a mindset challenge. I think for the last 50 years, we've depended on the current system of doctors, health insurance, hospitals, clinics, pharmaceuticals to take care of our health and wellness. But really, that's the wrong mindset. The mindset should be, that is the sick care system. That is a disease care system. That's a system that's built to take care of you when you have a disease. Unfortunately, we've all outsourced our health to that system. So now we have many more diseases. We have all these chronic diseases that are causing a massive burden to that system. And unfortunately, that system, because of the way it's built, all of the incentives are misaligned. They're misaligned incentives to where it actually profits the sicker that you are. And so, we need to understand that that's not a system that's there for health management or health care. It's there for disease management, okay, and sick care. So what I talked about in the last episode was my proposal is we need to create a new system that's focused on health. And so that new system focused on health runs in parallel with the disease care system. And what it does is it keeps you healthy. So you don't need the disease care system, or you need it in the last few months of your life, not for years and years and years with chronic disease. And so that's what I'm excited about right now, is we're at that moment in time where I think we're going to create that.
I feel like as we're thinking about this new system coming into play, we're still working in this old paradigm. And we really can't talk about problems of the health and wellness industry without talking about access. I mean, we have large swaths of this country where people just don't have access, so like there are all these innovative technologies that help us to live healthier, but they're out of reach for so many Americans. What are your thoughts with the new system about how to make the inaccessible part accessible? How do we change that in this new framework?
Yes, that's a great question, Maya. So I look at access as two challenges. One is a challenge of the expense of it. So the monetary challenge of it, how expensive it is. And people don't have money allocated towards spending any more money on their health than what the insurance provides. And secondly, it is a location access problem too, right? So if you are far away from a doctor's office, for example, it's hard to get there. So you go there less, pretty much, right? And so I think both of those problems, however, can be solved with a little bit of a mindset shift. And we have modern technology now to help us solve these problems too. Number one mindset shift, I think, is that you have to understand in the Pareto principle, there's 20% of the information that's going to make 80% of the difference in your health. And all of that doesn't involve going to a doctor's office at all. It's really lifestyle changes, right? The problem with lifestyle changes is people didn't have access to the information before. But now there's so much more access to information through podcasts, through the internet, through artificial intelligence. And I think once people get their head wrapped around what are the changes that they can make that really move the needle for their health, they just have to get into a routine and a habit to practice those. And I think that, people can now access this information for free on podcasts. So just knowing which ones to listen to, knowing which websites to go to get good information, and really focusing in on the 20% of the information that makes 80% of the difference will get a lot of people healthier. Secondly is, I'm a big believer, as we talked about in the last podcast, about becoming the CEO of your own health, right? And so becoming the CEO of your own health, just like a CEO of a company, would never run a company without looking at numbers on a frequent basis. It's empowering yourself with your numbers, okay? And so we talked about some biomarkers, asking your doctor when you do get to the doctor to get these biomarkers done for you. I think once you have those numbers, then doing your research and arming yourself with that information and knowing how that affects your biology. Like, all of us know how much credit we have left in our credit card, hopefully, how much money we have left in our bank account. We know how many miles it is that we have to drive before we run out of gas. We have numbers all the time. Why don't we have these numbers for our own biology, right? The most important numbers. We should have those numbers. And so I think getting your mindset wrapped around those numbers also is very important. For the few people that can't ask their doctor for these, maybe they don't have a doctor, maybe their doctor won't order them for them, or they just don't even have health insurance. There's a lot of websites and places now we can get blood tests done for not that expensive anymore, believe it or not. The price of these are going down pretty exponentially. I think investing a little bit of money into this is something people should think about.
Just even to bring it home about having conversations with your own doctor. I'm an internist. My own doctor was like, "Why do you need an ApoB?" And I said, because I actually said it's really more useful than like the cholesterol panel. And I just got a lot of pushback. And at one point I said, I mean, I can just order it on myself, I suppose, because that's what I have to do, I guess. But could you imagine, and that brings up something that you've kind of, I think, really like talked through, but not called out, which is the trust. Like, you mentioned starting your career as a surgeon. You'll always be a surgeon. We're all here as healthcare providers, and we all sincerely care about giving patients the best care. But there has been, frankly, an erosion of trust. I give you my personal example. You're talking about just how you had many doctors who said, and you're going to be on this drug for the rest of your life, or X, Y, and Z, kind of putting you into a category. How do you think we can win that trust back?
As physicians?
Yeah, as physicians, and kind of, just we can only do what we can do individually. So, is there, if you reflect now back on, obviously as a surgeon, but also thinking about the colleagues you worked with, what are some of the things we could be doing, if we're not ourselves working inside of a clinic like Next Health? What could we be doing better, and how can we win, some of that trust back when patients ask us to be the CEO of their healthcare and we kind of push back because that's our instinct?
Yeah. I think number one, I talked to a lot of doctors about this. And at first, when I started Next Health, I hit up upon a lot of doctors that were resistant to what I was doing, right? Because, like, what are you doing? Like, you're giving people their own blood tests, biomarkers, like you're talking about with your own experience. And I got a lot of, doctors that actually said that I was a quack for doing that, et cetera. And what I really, noticed is that for whatever reason, doctors were taught that they know everything about health. And I had the personal revelation, and I talked to this particular physician that told me that I was a quack. And I said, the reason that you're calling me this is you're not acknowledging your own personal limitations as a physician, okay? So why don't you just say that you don't know anything about ApoB, and that's why you're not ordering it? Acknowledge that limitation, but don't project that upon the patient as them being stupid for even asking for it, And so, or this, I love that comment that your doctor said, Kavita, was like, what are we going to do with that information? Well, no one's asking you to do anything. They're just asking you for the information. Let them decide what they're going to do about it, right? And so I think the first thing that we can do is acknowledge our limitation as far as, number one, our knowledge base, but also number two, what do we want to do for our patients, right? Like, a lot of doctors don't want to get involved until someone has a disease, and then they can do something about it. They just don't feel inspired to get involved at an earlier. Maybe they don't have the time. Maybe they don't want to because it's beneath their training, like even as a surgeon, like anything that wasn't surgical, I was like, why are you even seeing me for this? Like, I only do surgery, right? And so getting that sense of, I would say, humility as a physician to admit what you don't know and what you don't want to do, so someone can go find a doctor that does want to do this and that does have the knowledge, I think is very important.
That's very powerful. And I can tell you, so as a dietitian, we get poo-pooed all the time.
Yeah.
Where someone will come in and will say, well, there's plenty that you can do with nutrition and lifestyle shifts. And we're constantly begging physicians for 3 or 6 months to work with people. And then we turn it around and then they say, oh, it's not going to last. So I think it's powerful to hear it coming from you and also physicians like Kavita that, listen, people want this information and they want to be in the driver's seat.
Yeah. I think it's a huge miss on the healthcare system's part that every doctor doesn't have a nutritionist in their office. I mean, nutrition can be a part of the solution for almost every single medical diagnosis. And so just like we all hire medical assistants, phlebotomists in our office, why don't we all have a nutritionist in our office? It would make such a huge difference to have that person or a dietitian in their office to, see every single patient, whether it has to do with the disease that they're managing or other things. I think it's so helpful,
Agreed. So to end on a lighter note, tell us something that you're excited about, something coming down the pipe in the health and wellness industry. And, maybe also talk to us about any new devices or ideas in this space that you're excited about that are accessible to large groups of people.
Yes. Okay. So one of the things that I'm excited about on a level of the healthcare system is that there's a lot of talk right now about increasing how much money people could put in their health savings account. And I think that's going to be a massive change in the right direction, that people can spend some of the money that they typically put towards health insurance, which provides only disease care, towards actual health. And then I see a world where people realize through their HSA dollar spending, maybe they don't need their insurance as much, and they go to disaster care insurance. So if they have a heart attack or cancer or get hit by a bus, they can use their insurance. But until then, their money is much better spent in health, right? And so I'm really hopeful that some of the legislation gets passed on the federal level to increase HSA dollars. Secondly, I would say as far as devices and technology that's coming out in the health and wellness space, number one, I would think, is people having more access to blood tests and the testing getting cheaper, both on genetic testing and blood testing. I think that's going to be massive because there's so much in there. There's so much data, and giving people their own act. No one cares more about your health than you do. Or you should be the one that cares the most about your health, right? And so giving people access to their own data, I think it's extremely important. Secondly, I would say is there's this therapy that's been locked up in hospitals for decades called therapeutic plasma exchange. We use it. Dr. Patel probably heard of this too, where, if you have like a digoxin overdose, a medication overdose, we use it for that. We use it for autoimmune crisis, et cetera. There's a lot of research going on right now on using the same therapeutic plasma exchange procedure where we're removing someone's plasma, which is where toxins live, cholesterol lives. It's where immune complexes live, inflammation, cytokines live, and removing liters of it, 3 liters actually for most people, and discarding it and replacing it with albumin. And we're seeing that slow the rate of Alzheimer's. We're seeing it eliminate inflammation. We're seeing it actually result in lower cholesterol levels, bad cholesterol levels, and replacing it with good cholesterol. And so I'm very hopeful for this tried and true technology that actually is not a medication. Like, we're not giving people a medication or a chemical. We're just removing all the bad stuff in our blood. I'm excited to see what happens with that. And so we're involved with a lot of research right now on how can we move the needle with therapeutic plasma exchange. Specifically, the research that I'm doing is around removing toxins. We live in one of the most toxic societies that humans have ever lived in the last 10, 15 years. There's over 150,000 toxins in our environment. We measure only 80 of them, and they're through the roof in most people. And it's kind of defeating when you see these numbers. But then when you do a plasma exchange procedure and they go down by 10, 20, 30% after one treatment, that's hopeful. Now, we still need to do the research on how many plasma exchanges are needed, how long the changes last, and does it really help our biology? And that's the research that we're getting involved in right now.
That's pretty exciting, and something we look forward to reading or seeing in the form of the results of the research. And I imagine not just inside of Next Health, but trying to get this kind of adopted, as you said, taking it out of the inpatient hospital setting. Dr. Darshan Shah is a board-certified surgeon, author, and healthcare entrepreneur. Thank you so much for speaking with us again.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take one final break. When we come back, Maya and I will reflect on this past year of the show and our hopes for the health and wellness industry going forward. Stay tuned.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file. Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the new generative AI assistant from AWS. Many tasks can make business slow, like wading through mud. Help! Luckily, there's a faster, easier, less messy choice. Amazon Q can securely understand your business data to help you streamline tasks, like summarizing quarterly results or doing complex analyses in no time. Q got this. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
You're listening to Well Now. I'm Kavita Patel.
And I'm Maya Feller. So, Kavita, as we think about the future of healthcare, sick care, the wellness industry, there's so much that I feel like we could talk about. I'm really interested in kind of what you see in your work as a physician. Like, what are people saying in your circles around where we're headed?
Yeah, I think just to reflect a little bit on what we just heard from Dr. Shah, I think the key takeaway or the theme to what we discussed was consumerism. Like he talks about being the CEO of your healthcare, the boss of everything. And I found that to be just a very different way to talk about healthcare. And it's in stark contrast to kind of what I would consider my traditional environment for practicing medicine, which is, kind of unidirectional. Like we're telling the patient, like, here's what we think is best for you. Here's a bunch of orders, like, maybe some prescriptions and like, good luck, go forth and conquer. And Dr. Shah really just kind of spoke through this, like, you can be in charge. Here's blood work. You don't need orders that come from just your primary care physician. And then just that conversation at the end about plasma, kind of taking things from a traditional hospital setting and having some use for that in the outpatient setting, Maya, is pretty incredible. How about you?
I mean, so I have to, I think it's so incredible. And the reason that I'm kind of taking a moment is because I'm trying to imagine the people that I work with utilizing this. And I'm trying to imagine folks who have limited health literacy, limited nutrition literacy, really getting online and being able to drive that bus. And I mean this from the most respectful place, when they have 2, 3, 4 jobs and are still kind of struggling to make the day-to-day function, how they're able to prioritize themselves. And one thing that he said, that Dr. Shah said, that I thought was so great, right? We've got all this data and we know how much is on our credit card. And I laughed and I thought, yes, in some circles we do. And in some circles we don't, because people still go and try to buy things and the card declines and they're surprised. So, I mean, so I'm hopeful. Listen, I want a plasma exchange. I mean, I want the toxins out.
Right.
and then I wonder, okay, well, what does this look like when we actually put it into practice and we kind of standardize it so that it's supposed to be accessible to people across the board? And I do think this idea of having a new system where people are actually able to use their healthcare dollars to take care of themselves works really well if it goes all the way down to things like the quote unquote community plan.
Yeah, I agree. It is a lot of kind of hopefulness. That's all we can be, I think, is hopeful for the future, because if we get so bogged down in what's not working today, we can't really think about solutions. Like Maya, in closing, and we're closing out the show, closing out the year, so many kind of reflections. I know we spoke about some of our favorite episodes or what stuck out for us, but are there some final thoughts that you have or things you might carry forward with you in your practice? Because I know that certainly even just this conversation with Dr. Shah, really, I know it will leave a lasting impression on what I do day to day. How about you? Are there some things on reflection that you're going to incorporate in changing your work as a dietitian?
Absolutely. So, our conversation with Zach Clark around recovery and substance use really left an imprint on me, because it's not just substances that we use to cope. There's so many other things in society that we do outside of ourselves to cope. And so, for sure, when I'm working with people, I think that I will be a lot more thoughtful about those coping mechanisms that are harmful, and really listen to people, I think, in a different way, as kind of like a proxy for saying, okay, I see you, I hear you, and understanding that there's sometimes when folks are simply ready, and then there's sometimes when folks are not ready. And so holding the both and as I go forward and do my work. And I do have to say, Kavita, as a dietitian who thinks a lot about functional nutrition and whole person health, I absolutely think that moving forward, I'm going to be a lot more like get outside, go into sunlight. What are the things that people can do for themselves that are that 80%, right? What's the low lift that gives the biggest impact? Because at the end of the day, when we're thinking about wellness and well-being, it is, as you always say, and there's so many, as I refer to them, Kavita-isms that I take and I say to folks in my life, right? That wellness is not just from the neck down, it's also the entire body, from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. So I'll take a lot of the things that you've said during our conversations and time and weave them into my life for myself, but also for the people that I work with. What about you, Kavita? What are you thinking is gonna, kind of stick around?
Well, first, I have to say, maybe the most important thing that's going to stick around and 100% influence the way I practice medicine has been just doing this with you, meeting you, becoming a friend, and also thinking about what, as much as I would love to say that I meaningfully incorporated or think about nutrition with patients, I don't have time. I often kind of do like I'm referring you to the dietitian, good luck, kind of moment. And then just stop thinking about it. It's like a box I check. And I think you personally have also kind of made me reflect on, I want to reverse the process. Instead of starting with asking about symptoms, it's starting with like, tell me a typical day and what you ate. And I think sometimes people are like, wait, what? Why are you asking me that? And they get a little like, that's not what I made the appointment for. I need my pap smear. But I think it's just important to kind of, one, meaningfully and conscientiously do that. But also it brings up so many things that we've touched on, because you don't just kind of think about nutrition in isolation, right? It does have a lot to do with your mindset. Honestly, it also has to do with just, I have so many people that they're on like 2 to 3 jobs. They'll have their main job and then they, work as an Uber driver to and from. And people kind of are kind of scrambling for solutions. They want to be well, but they feel like it's inaccessible because they can't afford it. And Maya, you say this often. So, we've learned from our guests, but you've taught me about, I can emphasize frozen vegetables. They're accessible. And guess what? They provide the same nutrition. And so people can have like these, I call them kind of health or life hacks, because they need them. I need them. You need them. We all need them. So I'm pretty grateful that we were able to collaborate on a topic that does not get enough attention, but also question things or kind of try to peel the onion layers away and be a little bit more, provocative or pushing on what some of the boundaries are for health and wellness. So with that, Maya, we're going to ask each other what we've never been able to ask each other. Maya Feller, how do you define wellness?
Oh, Kavita Patel, that's such a big question. And I think I'm going to use everything that I've learned from every guest on this show and from you, is that wellness for me is everything that happens in the entire body. Does it feel good? can it function well? And Kavita, I think of you when I say this to my patients. I say, are you able to run for the train and not get to the train and be totally winded and have pain the next day? That's wellness. Do you wake up and say, wow, I want to be here today? That's wellness. Do you sit down to a meal and have the ability to actually eat it from start to finish? That's wellness. There's so much. And the one thing that I have learned, and I hear from you, Kavita, and from our guests, is that I don't think that I have to buy things to be well. I don't think that I have to spend a lot of money on gadgets. Does it make it easier and better? Perhaps. But is it a must? I don't think so. What about you? How do you, Kavita Patel, Dr. Patel, define wellness?
Yeah, I really have been influenced by the guests we've had, by listening to you respond just to even my conversation questions. I define wellness as having the ability to live the life you want. And that does not look like everyone else's definition of living the life they want. That could mean literally anything from, living to work to working to live. So some people enjoy like working, and I have friends who actually get like a high and a thrill from doing what they do all day. I don't. So I really think about working to live as a functional part of the definition of wellness. And that includes setting boundaries, some of the things we've talked with guests about mindset. So the definition of wellness is individual and personal. And I don't have to apologize for it anymore. I think there was always a time where I would have said a year ago even that being well is, making sure you're getting like you're eating well, you're exercising, 5 days a week, and you're spending like screen-free time, with your family members. Yes, all of those things might be true, but it really does. Like what my North Star, my why of wellness is really about, like being able to do those things, picking up boxes, even what you just reflect on having that feeling that you're not too old to do something, and that you also appreciate your age, that you're not trying to be half your age. You are who you are, and you enjoy being in your skin. That's, to me, the ultimate definition of wellness.
And one thing that I have to say for me in this process of talking to all of our guests and working with you is that it is not lost on me that we have had an incredibly diverse set of people come through and inform us from so many backgrounds. And we really made it, I'd say, one of the central parts of when we were looking for folks to book, that we cared quite a bit about diversity. And I also think that it's super unique for people to hear from two women of color, a physician, a dietitian, and that we are open and that we're honest and that we are showing that we're growing as we listen and learn.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, Maya. That's our show. Thank you all for spending this last year with us, for listening and sharing your own stories about health and wellness with us. Well Now is produced and edited by Vic Whitley-Berry. Ben Richmond is Slate's Senior Director of Podcast Operations, and Alicia Montgomery is Vice President of Audio. I'm Kavita Patel.
And I'm Maya Feller. Thank you for listening, and stay well.